In this lesson, we will learn how to use GridView. So GridView, as the name suggests, helps us display items or images in a grid. So what I have open on my screen is an empty Android app, and the way we will design it, we will use the XML format for the first time. So instead of using design, I will go to text, and in this text is where we seeing the design in the XML. So when we used to design it using the design part of it, which is this tool that we have been using, what it used to do was generate an XML. So for the purpose of grid view, we will edit this XML to generate the design. So the first thing I will do is I will just go and delete this constant layout. This was the default XML that came up, and here we will add a grid view. So once we have added a grid view, let's start putting in the values. So the Android would XML and NS will remain the same. Then what are the other things we need here? Let's start defining them. So I'll first delete what we do not need. We do not need this app. We do not need tools. And because we don't need tools, we do not need the tools context. So now that we have deleted them, let us start adding what we need. So the first thing we will need to add is the ID of the grid view. So the way we will say ID is equal to add the rate plus ID and whatever is the ID we need to use. So let's call it say grid view. Layout width and height have been set to match underscore parent, which is fine. Then the next thing we need to set is gravity. So we will say gravity is equal to center, which means it will center it. Then we have Android column width. So what is the width of the column we want to show? So let's say we want to put it as 120 dp. So we have defined our width. Then we need to specify Android horizontal spacing. So horizontal spacing says how much space do we want between the horizontal parts of the grid. So let's put it as say 10 dp. Next we need to specify, similar to horizontal, we need to specify vertical spacing, and let's again set it to say 10 dp. We need to also define the number of columns we want the grid view to have. So let's define the columns to be say auto fit. So auto fit means it will fit the columns as per what is getting fit into the design. And then we will define one more thing, stretch mode, and stretch mode is column width, so it will stretch to fit the column width. So with this our design is complete, and let us go and see how does it look in the designer. So now this gives us the feel of a grid view. So we have designed our grid view, and this time we designed it using XML. So now that we have designed it, what are the other things we need to do here? So let us go and start doing. So let's say we want to display a grid of popular movies from Hollywood. So the first thing I am going to do is I am going to take the images of these movies, copy them and paste them in drawable. So let me paste all the images. Okay. And now if I look at drawable, I have a lot of these images, the banners of these movies that have come to drawable. The other thing we need to do is we will go to main activity and we will just write our piece of code. So what all do we need to specify in main activity? Let us just start doing that. So we will define a variable for the grid view. So grid view and let's say call it grid view. We will first initialize it. So grid view is equal to find view by id r dot id dot. So remember, this is the id we had given in the XML. So if we just go and look at the XML, here is the id we had specified, so we are using the same id. So now once I have created the grid view, I will just grid view dot set adapter, and we will create say a new image adapter, and we will pass this to it. So we will just create an image adapter. The image adapter, as we have seen in the case of a list view, we'll create a custom adapter which will help us handle all the images. So now that we have done all of this, we will just go ahead and create our custom image adapter. So let us just create a new custom image adapter. For that, we'll need to create a new Java class and say image adapter. That's the name we are using, and its superclass is base adapter. So it extends base adapter, and let us create it. So now we have public class image adapter, or it should implement the image, and let us just go ahead and generate all the implements methods. So it must implement all of them. So let's just do it again. So we just went in and clicked on generate. Generate all the implements methods. So we will just implement all the implements methods, and we will just click it, and it will generate us all the implement methods. So these are the methods that this class should implement for it to be a proper class. So now that we have designed it, now let's start making changes to it. So what we want to do, the first thing we will just create is a private variable context. So this is the context we get passed from, and let's call it say my context. So we have, once we have created the context, then we also need to create the images we want to show. So we will just create an integer array. Why are we creating the integer array? My images, so that it will just store the resource IDs of all the images. So let us just put in all the image IDs that we added here. So the way we can do it is r.drawable dot, and we will start getting all our image names. So we will keep on adding them. r.drawable dot back panther, and then let's keep on adding them. r.drawable dot Captain America, r.drawable dot fantastic, and we will just keep on adding all of them in this fashion. So this is just going to take a little bit of time. As I add all of them, it will take me a minute. So Harry Potter, Hulk, r.drawable dot. So these are the launchers. Inception, after Inception we have Interstellar. So why are we adding so many images? So that when we add so many images, we are able to see those behaviors of the grid view, that we are able to scroll and see all of it. So just it helps once we do it in a proper way. So I think a couple of them more we need to add. and once we have added them it helps us. So let's just complete this. So I think a couple more to go. So we have Superman, and then we have Thor, and then we have Wonder class. So the last one we have is Wonder class. So once this is done, so we have defined our images we want to show. So now that this is done, let's move to the next. So what we now need is a constructor, because we had called the constructor there. So let us define our constructor. So public image adapter, and what we passed there was a context, so context C, and what we will do here is basically we will say my context is assigned the value C. So once we have designed this, so why is it giving an error? It's probably giving an error because of this extra bracket that I had put in. So we have the constructor defined. Then what do we do to get count? So get count will return my images dot length. So the number of images we are showing here. Get item will return the image at the position there, so my images, and it will return the value I. So get item ID will always return 0, and then we need to implement this method get view. So what does get view do? Get view will be used to display the image. So let's create an image view, because these are images, so we will use an image view, and it takes a parameter of type context, which is my context. Now we will set the image view resource dot set image resource, and which image resource we need to set? My images I. So we setting it for the ith context. So now this has got the image. Let's just set image view dot set scale type, and what are we saying here? Image view dot scale type dot, and the scale type we want to set is fit center. So what does it mean, fit center? Fit center means that all the space that we have specified for this image, it will fit from the center. So that's the best fit we can do. And we need to also do one more thing, image view dot set layout params, and in the new param we will set new grid view dot layout params, and the parameters we are going to give are grid view dot auto fit, and let us say we give this 90. So what are we doing here? We are saying that why auto fit? Because in the, if you go here, we had defined what our column width would be. So we had defined our column width to be 120 dp, so which is why we will not define the column width here. But we had not defined how much would be our height of the row, so we have put it as 90, because we want images of the 4x3 images to come up. So now that we have defined and designed all of it, we will just compile and run our code. So let us start our compilation process. We know compile will just take a little bit of time as the build happens, and as the build is happening, it will then install the APK. So it is now installing the APKs. and it is launching the activity. So unfortunately grid view has stopped. So let us just look at why that happened. Again, typically that happens if our drawable has not been set right. Let us just look at drawable. Is there any issue in drawable? I don't see so. Let's look at image adapter. Are we seeing any issue here? No. So what do we do in such a case? Typically what we will do in such a case is build the project again. So clean the project and build it again. So I've just cleaned the project and I will then try to build it again. So now that we have cleaned the project, I will just try and build it again. So one of the most common remedies we see when we get such an error is just clean the project and build it again. So if it's an issue of some dependencies that got wrongly structured at the time of our build, then this is a very good way to handle it. Unfortunately, our grid view has stopped again. So which means there is some issue that we have created. So let us just look at our all the pieces of code starting from our XML. So is there an error in the XML? So let's just start with it. So schemas is perfectly fine. ID is fine. Height, width is fine. Gravity is equal to center. Column width is fine. Horizontal spacing seems fine. Number of columns is auto fit. Column width is fine. So we have a grid view. Let's just look at the design. What are we getting here? We are getting a grid view, which is perfect. So we are getting this grid view here. Let's just go to main activity. Is there any issue here that we can see? No. Let's also just for a minute see if we get anything in a logcat. Unable to register. Is there an issue we can see? Null pointer exception and on a null object. Let us see why do we got a null object. So main activity seems fine. So we have initialized the grid view properly. Yes, we put it, and then we set the new adapter, which is fine. In the image adapter, we have my images defined, which is a public integer. We have the context defined. Image adapter my context. Then any other issue we can see here. So we have defined our context. Then we have the get count, which is my images dot length, which is perfectly fine. Then get item is my images I, which is again fine. Get item ID, and then we have our get view. Int I view, and then the view group. So image view we create, we set the resource, we set the scale type, and we are this is the mistake I've done. This is a very common mistake. So now I have returned null here. What should be returned here? Image view that we created. So this is the mistake. So good that we spent a little bit of time debugging it, because this is a common mistake we do. So I just returned a null here, which was leading to the crash. So let me now just compile it again. So my build has started to happen and it's installing the APKs. Let's build it. What happens in this case? And it's a 6-star error. And as we can see, all these images have come in a certain size that we have been able to watch here. I can make a couple of changes here. So let us see if we want to make it in 4:3 fashion only. I can make the column width 160, and if my column width is 160, I will just go to my image chapter and say make it to be 120, so that the 4:3 ratio is maintained. And now let me run it again. Right now our image adapter, the grid view looked a certain way. Let us see that we should see larger images, and we are seeing larger images in this case. And now I can continue to scroll on this. So only 2 rows it would fit in, and this is why it has fitted 2 rows here. We can go ahead and make another change. Say we want it to be 200. So I can make it 150 here, 200 and 150, and I can run it again, and we will see larger images, and I think the spacing would reduce in this case. So let's just wait for the APK to come up, and this is with, so that is how we have been able to control the images, and all the images are center fit. So irrespective of size of the image is getting fitted into this size that we have specified.